Hi everyone, today we will see about the features of fundamental rights. We have 12 features listed in Lakshmikant Polity textbook. We will see one by one. First one is that some of the fundamental rights are available only to citizens, whereas some are available to citizens as well as foreigners. We have fundamental rights mentioned in Article 15, 16, 19, 29 and 30 which is available only to citizens. We will see each of them one by one. Article 15 is prohibition of discrimination on the ground of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. So this is not available to foreigners. Article 16 is also not available to foreigners, which is equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. Then next one is Article 19. 19 have 6 rights regarding the freedom. They are freedom of speech and expression, assembly, association, movement, residence and profession. So this is also Article 19 is also not available for the foreign nationals. The next one is Article 29. Article 29 is about protection of language, script and culture of minorities. So this is also not available to foreign citizens, and Article 30 is also not available for foreign nationals. They are right of minorities to establish and administer educational institution. So these articles or fundamental rights are not available for the foreign nationals. The second feature is that fundamental rights are not absolute, but they are qualified. Sometimes state can impose reasonable restriction on the fundamental rights, and which means that we all have fundamental rights, but when we are using our fundamental rights or enjoying our fundamental rights, we should take care that our fundamental rights are not violating the fundamental rights of other citizens. We can enjoy music as loud as we can, but if we are putting this music on and if it is creating problem for other people, then we should have to restrict our fundamental rights of or freedom. Okay, so likewise state can impose some restriction or society or have some social control based on the society needs. Okay, so fundamental rights are not absolute but are qualified. State can impose some reasonable restriction on them based on the needs of the society. That is the second feature of the fundamental right. The third one is that most of the fundamental rights are against the arbitrary action of the state, but some of them are against the action of private individuals. For example, untouchability. It cannot be practiced by public as well as private individual. If a person is discriminating or practicing untouchability against another person, a private person, then that person will have to face legal action against, because this is a fundamental right available to the person and it is guaranteed by the constitution. So fundamental rights like untouchability is given or can be available to a citizen against the arbitrary action of the state as well as against the private individual. Okay, so based on that we have this feature available, which is some of the fundamental rights are available against the arbitrary action of the state, some are against the action of private individual as well. Okay, then fourth one is that some of the fundamental rights are negative in character, whereas some are positive in nature. For example, if we are taking the fundamental right which is mentioned in Article 15, which says that prohibition of discrimination on the ground of religion, there is a negative word which is prohibition. So this is negative in character but for the welfare of the people. Then Article 16 says that equality of opportunity in matters of public employment should be ensured. So this is a kind of positive fundamental right. So the words mentioned in the articles are positive, can be positive as well as negative. So Article 15 is kind of negative whereas Article 60 is a kind of positive fundamental right. So this is what is mentioned in feature number 4 given in the Lakshmikant book. Okay, so some of the fundamental rights are negative, whereas some of the fundamental rights are positive. Then fifth feature is that fundamental rights are justiciable, which means that if a person's fundamental right is violated, he can go directly to the court and he can file a petition that his fundamental right is violated. Okay, so because of that, we can say that fundamental rights are justiciable. This is the fifth feature available. And sixth one is that they are defended and guaranteed by the Supreme Court. So if a person fundamental right is violated, he have two options. He can either go to the Supreme Court or go to the High Court. Usually, in case of other cases, like if any property issues, we can go to the lower court, and lower court, from lower court we can go to the High Court only by means of appeal, and from High Court through appeal we will be going to the Supreme Court. So this is the proper hierarchy of the court, and we will have to move from one court to another, from the lower court to High Court to Supreme Court. So this is the proper channel for approaching the court. But in case of fundamental right, there is no channel. We can directly go to the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court is the guarantor or the defender of the fundamental right, which is mentioned in the Constitution under Article 32, which itself is a fundamental right. Okay, so feature 6 is that all the fundamental rights are defended and guaranteed by the Supreme Court. Okay, then feature 7 is that they are not sacrosanct or permanent, which means that when it is needed, Parliament can make some changes in the fundamental right. But for making changes in the fundamental rights, Parliament need constitutional amendment. It is not possible through an ordinary act. Okay, so by constitutional amendment, they can make changes in the fundamental right. Okay, and also we should note that even if we are doing that, we should not alter, or it should not affect the basic structure of the Constitution. Okay, so when they are making amendment to the fundamental right, it should not affect the basic structure of the Constitution. That should be kept in mind. Okay, so this is the seventh feature available for the fundamental rights. That is, they are not sacrosanct or permanent. They can be amended by an act of the Parliament. The eighth one is that it can be suspended during the operation of national emergency. Okay, and there is exception as well. All the fundamental rights cannot. There are some fundamental rights like Article 20 and 21. This cannot be suspended at any cost. So other fundamentals can be suspended during the national emergency. And again, the 6 rights guaranteed by the Article 19 can be suspended only when there is an emergency declared on the ground of war or external aggression. So national emergency can be declared based on 3 grounds. One is on the ground of war, second one is external aggression. Both in together we will call as external emergency. Okay, either on the ground of war or external aggression, we will call both of them as external emergency. And the third one is armed rebellion. We will say it as internal emergency. So we have 2 types of reason for declaring a national emergency. They are external emergency or internal emergency. So for internal emergency, it is not possible to suspend Article 19. Only in case of external emergency, Article 19 can be suspended. So in case of national emergency, except 20 and 21, all can be suspended. But in Article 19 can be suspended only during the external emergency. Okay, then that was the 8th feature available for the fundamental rights. Then we will see about the 9th feature, which is the limitation on the fundamental rights. The scope of operation is limited by Article 31A, 31B and 31C. So there are some limitations on the fundamental right. They are given in Article 31A, B, C. Okay, 31A states that discussing about saving of laws providing for the acquisition of estates. Okay, and Article 31B is about validation of the certain act and regulation which are included in the 9th schedule, and Article 31C is saving of laws giving effect to the certain directive principle. So in three cases there are some limitations on the fundamental rights. So that is the ninth feature. The 10th feature is that their application to the members of armed forces, paramilitary forces, police, intelligence agencies and analogous or similar services can be restricted or abrogated by the parliament. You may be knowing that these fundamental rights all are not available for the military as well as paramilitary forces. That is for the proper functioning of the military as well as paramilitary forces. All the forces given in the 10th feature are not free to use, or they are not it is not possible for them to freely use their fundamental rights. Okay, so they have some restriction on them based on the fundamental rights, and it includes armed forces, paramilitary forces, police, intelligence agencies and some kind of analogous services. Okay, so that is the 10th feature. Now we have two more which is left, and the 11th one is that the application of the fundamental right can be restricted when there is martial law is in force. Okay, so martial law, or we will say military rule, when it is imposed in this country, there will be restriction on the fundamental right. Okay, this is actually completely different from national emergency. We will have to study national emergency and martial law separately, because they have there are lot of differences between martial law and national emergency. Okay, so in case of martial law or military rule, there will be restriction on the fundamental rights. So that is the 11th feature. So now we will see the final feature, that is most of the fundamental rights are directly enforceable, while few are enforced based on the law made for effect to them. Okay, so some are self enforceable, but some of them need the establishment or enforcement of the law separately by the parliament. In such cases, parliament will be making the law, or there will be some act or policies made in order to ensure the imposing of or the proper insurance of the fundamental rights. So some are directly enforceable, whereas some need to be enforced through making some laws. Okay, so that is the 12th and final feature of these fundamental rights. So these are all the fundamental features of the fundamental rights. It can be expected in the form of an essay question or some point wise question. So that's all about the features of the fundamental right. Thank you.